Hello and welcome back to the What the Falk podcast in association with Viper Goalkeeping. Today's guest is a defender that amassed over 500 league appearances for the likes of Sunderland, Sheffield United and Preston North End, and he's a man who currently finds himself stateside as manager and head coach of Tampa Bay Rowdies. Welcome to the show, Neill Collins. How are you doing? Are you all right?
Great, thanks very much for having me. Great to speak to you.
Not a problem at all, mate. First time I haven't messed up an intro in about sort of 5 weeks, that one.
Well done.
I'm getting there, mate. Professional after all. We'll start off with the present, and there's a heck of a lot we can speak about with the present, but currently head coach of the Tampa Bay Rowdies. They play in what most people would recognise as like the American version of the championship, I believe. So you live in the state of Florida, which, let's be honest, was an area severely hit by coronavirus. 6 months has been weird for everyone, but as a manager, maybe in a different place to where we are at the moment, how's it been in context of being a manager with the pandemic?
Yeah, especially as I think whether you're a young coach or an experienced coach, no one's dealt with this before. So there was a lot of firsts, a lot of challenges. So that's been a real learning experience because as much as we all love football and trying to build a team and tactics and man management, it becomes secondary when people can't do their jobs. So trying to deal with that side of things. But since we've came back, the players have made my life easy because they've done a really good job looking after themselves, and we've managed to kind of get on with things as normal as it could be in the circumstances, and we've got to play. And I think if you'd said to me in May that we'd get the opportunity and we'd have played 14 games and we'd be getting prepared for the playoffs, I'd have been delighted. So yeah, really, really pleased with how things have went in the circumstances. But there's always that kind of reality lurking. We're in such a bubble here that there's a lot of other things going on in the world, and the worst of it's probably still not past from a big picture kind of point of view. But at least we've got the football to take our minds off it.
Absolutely, and I think, it's, at the time of speaking, it's a bit of a weird one. The Premier League obviously got to play out, and the leagues have started. And in Florida at the moment, are you able to play in America, or is it certain restrictions on crowds? Or
yeah, so we started back in. I think our first game back was in July.
Mm-hmm.
First 2 or 3 games, no crowds. But again, every state's different. It's almost like your own country. So we're allowed, I think, off the top of my head, I think we're maybe allowed 25% capacity. Yeah. But our club's just trying to make it as safe as possible. So next home game, we're looking for 700 people, which will be 10% of our capacity. So we've been fortunate to play 2 or 3 games on the road with fans, a lot of behind closed door games. And I think that's the funny thing that I'm struggling with right now, especially when I watch Premier League and football back in the UK, is football's all about the fans, but yet they've started the season without them. And I understand this is where it becomes, is it about the fans or is it about the TV deals? And I see both sides of it. Because at the end of the day, these clubs need to function and they need to survive, and that's why they need to be on the television. But it's disappointing without fans. It's just not the same.
No, it certainly feels really different. And I've been lucky enough to watch a few games on my own in a stadium, filming it. But I'm kind of working, can't be a fan. I haven't been to the stadium light in 6 months. It's very weird for everyone. And I think everyone's got their own sort of challenges with it. But as a manager, one thing I found weird when I'm watching sort of Sunderland, for example, is I can hear everything Phil Parkinson's saying. Like, I can hear what his instructions are, and it's kind of nice in a weird way. Is it easier for you as a manager to kind of get instructions to your players when you're behind closed doors then?
Yeah, well, the players can't ignore me, can they? Yeah, that's definitely a help, because that's one of the toughest things. Is a never mind as a manager, but as a player, when it's a full house and when the noise is up, you can't hear. You quite often hear commentators saying, "Oh, you should have shouted for that," and they should know that you don't always hear, even when someone's 10 feet away. Yeah. So that's definitely helpful, but it's not so helpful when you're maybe shouting things that you shouldn't, and it gets picked up by the TV cameras. So I've certainly had to learn quickly on that one.
We don't swear here in Scotland, do we? We never say anything bad.
Absolutely not. Always cool, calm and collected.
Absolutely. When it first started, the pandemic, what sort of, we had probably similar restrictions, to be honest, but you never really know the differences between countries, and we're a good 7 hours apart. So What restrictions were placed on you as a sort of a manager?
So, funny enough, we were just kind of talking about that today. To start with, it was pretty similar to Big Home Lockdown. Our owners were very much like just safety first, as most clubs in the USL were. So everyone at home. We didn't overdo it with the players. Yeah, we gave them an outline of a program to do, but how can you give someone a program when there's no end in sight?
Yeah.
What's the purpose? So the lads did some things on their own. We kept in touch with them on a personal basis. But then we got back into groups of 4. So it was groups of 4 non-contact training. And to start with, it was amazing. Just to be out of the house, purpose. But quite quickly, maybe I think we did that for 2 or 3 weeks. As we got to our 3rd week, you're starting to think, don't know how much longer we can keep this going. But then we managed to get it progressed to the next stage, which was 10. Play at groups of 10, non-contact, which was a step up. And then we had that for 2 weeks before we then got back into full contact testing. So I think the testing changed everything, because obviously when you're testing people, you can then allow them, if they're negative, to just continue as normal. So those months seemed probably a lot longer than they were. But it was the biggest problem was no one knew what was happening the following day, never mind the following week.
Yeah.
So that made it very tough. What do you plan for? So it really was a day at a time. Everything was a day at a time. And from speaking to people back home in the UK, it was very similar.
Yeah, a lot of people said the same thing. It's like, how do you don't know what you're working towards, so to speak. And that makes it difficult when there's sort of no end game. One thing I'm quite curious about with the American leagues, I think when people talk about the American leagues, they go MLS, and there's a lot of focus around that and which players are in there and who's been there and who's kind of made the game bigger and who's had failed moves there and who's had successful moves there. But your league is only a division below. But from what I can tell, it's sort of sectioned into groups almost, not like a state, but it almost is like that. I think you've got Atlanta in your groups and things like that. What is the setup of the league for the people that don't know, and how does it work?
So the normal setup outside this year is 2 leagues split, East and Western Conference. Think it's around 16 to 18 teams in both of those, depending. I mean, you've always got new teams appearing as teams go into the MLS. So you get 16 to 18 teams in both conferences, and you generally play each other home and away. So last year was a 34-game season. And then you go into a playoff system, and the winner from Eastern Conference, Western Conference plays in the final. This year, just due to the pandemic, to make everyone's life easier and all safer, they've done what you've just described. They've condensed it into regionalised groups for travel purposes. So we've not had to fly anywhere. You can imagine the size of the States. In a normal season, we fly to most games, whereas this year we can drive to Atlanta, we can drive to Charleston, we drive to Miami. So it was just from that point of view, and it's worked out well because it's gave us a season. And as much as it's not ideal to play the same teams 3 or 4 times, it's better than not playing at all.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I suppose that's probably a change up for you because you've been there a good 2-3 years now, and I imagine that's definitely a shock to the system, flying probably 5 to 7 hours for an away game. But on the flip side, I suppose it's probably a nice break up for you being able to kind of go back old school like you were in the UK and sort of drive places in.
It's brilliant, and the players love it because you're much more in control of your own destiny. You get on the bus, you can walk about, you're not going through airport security. And I think that's the thing, when people ask to compare the level, it's hard because you don't get on flights when you're in Scotland or in England to play, and that takes a toll on your body, whereas here you do. And then you've got the environmental factors of the heat. So it's been a nice change, not having to fly, and it's definitely gone back old school. Get on the bus, tell a few stories, play some cards. It's good.
Going sort of all the way back then to your childhood, quite far away from Florida. You were born in Troon in Scotland. It's a cheesy question to ask, but I always think it's a good question to ask. What are your earliest sort of childhood memories of falling in love with football?
No, that's easy. That's really easy. My dad took me to watch Kilmarnock Football Club, and just remember, again, probably more than anything, just spending time with my dad was the first thing. But then being in the crowd. We used to be terracing at Kilmarnock, so you're standing. I'd be playing behind the goal probably. And then getting to know the players. Kilmarnock was a great period in Kilmarnock's history when I started supporting, because they were in the second division. Tommy Burns came as a player, phenomenal signing at the time. He was my hero. So I think my earliest childhood memories are really honestly playing on a Saturday morning, coming home and then going to watch Kilmarnock, just football. And that was one of the strangest things about the lockdown. For the first time since about 5 years old, I was having Saturdays, just no football. Yeah, of course, you had the summer holidays. That's fine for 5 or 6 weeks when you know it's coming. But when it's not planned and you just don't have that fix, it's strange. So, yeah, that's my childhood memories.
Especially in Scotland as well. I find like during the pandemic, there was just a load of people in Scotland just really wandering around sort of aimless, just not really sure what to do. Like, where do I go next? Just with, as a kid, did you ever get the chance to meet Tommy Burns? Because there's so many good stories and what a great man he was. And I think everyone loved him, didn't they?
I mean, honestly, again, you've been doing, what you've been doing, so you've heard great stories, and I can tell you one. Kilmarnock beat Raith Rovers 5-1 in the Scottish Cup, and it was a great performance, and I was just, as I say, in love with the team, in love with Tommy Burns, and wrote him a letter that night about how much I enjoyed watching the team, and I still got his response, a month later, handwritten, and again, there'll be a million stories about that, about the man, and it's just great to hear when you hear other people speak about him. So, and it's amazing because he had such an impact in Kilmarnock, and then you look at the impact he had in Celtic. People forget what he did for Kilmarnock because he's considered a Celtic man.
Yeah.
But yeah, when people ask about who he grew up watching, there's obviously great players that played in England, but for me, he was the man.
Yeah, I think he's a few people as well, absolutely. As it was as a player, you started off with Queen's Park, a club notorious for their production and their production line, of quality of Scottish talent. I mean, you could reel off a million and one names, Andy Robertson being the big one, but you're another one as well that came from Queen's Park, made it into the league, had a good career in Championship League One. But what is it about Queen's Park that sort of creates that environment that people can flourish to such a high level?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I suppose many clubs try it. And I think for me at the time was they give everyone an opportunity.
Yeah.
So wherever you've been, within reason, but they're always having trials. They're always opening the doors to someone. Now, you then have to perform. But I think they're a club that's just always on the outlook for someone that's maybe just a bit behind in their development, or someone that's coming out of an academy that's looking for another opportunity. And then there's that pathway to the first team. Clubs that generally have success are the ones that create opportunities, and they always do that. And I just absolutely loved it at the club. The people behind the scenes, the fans. I mean, it's obviously a really traditional club and with great history. And it was great to be part of that. So I was lucky enough to play in the first team at 17, and that was one of the reasons I went there in the first place, because I just felt that playing reserve team football and first team football at a young age was going to be far more beneficial than potentially being in an academy where you can be one of many.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that there's a lot of players that go to Queen's Park that do have that hunger, that have maybe been, I mean, Robbo, obviously from Celtic, he dropped down. I think Shankland would have been the same era. I'm sure he got dropped from Rangers, I think it was at the time.
Yeah.
And it seems that, and I think you were obviously at Kilmarnock, weren't you? I think you were released at about 14 or something like that.
Yeah,
so
right, yeah.
History of players there dropping down, finding the hunger to play, and then all of a sudden zooming back up the leagues in sort of no time. But as it was, you had a pit stop. You went to Dumbarton, where you, if we're honest with each other, really built up your reputation and got the captaincy at a really young age. What was it that clicked for you at Dumbarton?
Yeah, so I had one full season in the first team at Queen's Park. It was a real learning curve. We had a really young team. When I came through at Queen's Park, we had the best under 16 team in the country at the time. We'd play regularly, like professional teams, beat them. A lot of those players then went into the first team to play together, but were very young. So that was a tough year. But I felt when I came back that following pre-season, just felt like a different player. I just felt like I was getting stronger, more experienced. And in pre-season games, I played really well against Hibs, and actually against Dumbarton, I played really well, and they wanted to sign me after that. And I think I just felt that point in time, they were a step up in level. They had some really good players I'd grown up watching. So I thought it was a good chance to test myself and then maybe get more in the shop window. And I know people weren't watching me at Queen's Park, but I just thought it was a little bit of a step up. And when I went there, the manager showed a lot of faith in me, as had John McCormick at Queen's Park. And yeah, I just felt much more comfortable in my body as 18, 19-year-old, ready to play at that level. And I do remember that I started getting linked here, there and everywhere. And that was a big learning curve because I had that, but then nothing quite happened.
Yeah.
So, you had to keep your head down. And when you're that age and you're reading the papers, you're thinking, is this going to happen? But, it was 2 real good years, but also learning as well.
And it was, I think your move was vindicated as well. And I think at the time Dumbarton were like a division above, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
So you've got that step up, but I think your decision and what you've just explained there was vindicated because it was there you were spotted by Mick McCarthy. It was there you had trials at Rangers, you had trials at Charlton. I'm a Sunderland fan, so I've always got to ask this question, but what convinced you that Wearside was the place to be?
Again, at that point, I had those trials and done well, but just nothing had quite fallen into place. And then my agent at the time was Gordon Smith, and he phoned me. I remember the moment. Yeah, Sunderland want to take you on trial. And at that time, straight away, I thought, wow, Mick McCarthy's the manager of Sunderland. That's a huge club. I knew the stadium of light. And I was just like, wow, because I would have taken at that point in time, honestly, the opportunity, League One, League Two, any opportunity to go full time, I would have grasped it. And I went down. They just came back pre-season training from America. And they came back, and honestly, the first morning, no one came to pick me up at the hotel. So I'm thinking, this is not good. Because one thing about trials is you can sometimes go on trial and it's just someone ticking a box, just someone doing someone a favour. So I was concerned. But then on the second day there, I played in a full 11v11 match with the first team and I knew I did really well. And afterwards, Mick took me, Stevie Caldwell, and Mark Lynch and started doing some individual work. And I think that was his way of testing to see a little bit closer. And straight after that, he was speaking to me, and I thought I'd made an impression. And then he asked me down for a following week. And a couple of boys had said to me, like, I think you're doing really well, you got a chance. And again, at the end of that week, Mick just said, if the fee can be agreed with Dumbarton, we'll sign you. And again, the thought going to Sunderland to me was just like beyond my wildest dreams, to be quite honest. I pinched myself. And when the phone call came that everything had been agreed, I was down there 2 days later, signed. And I remember that day I played in the reserve game, and then Mick had said, look, we've arranged tickets to come to watch Sunderland against Crewe that evening. And me and Dad drove, and as we got closer to the stadium, they kept just waving us on, letting you come, and you come. Before you know it, we're at the front door, and we went in the marble, the entrance, the marble kind of entrance. And I think me and my dad were like, couldn't believe it. We just couldn't believe it. That this was happening. So, yeah, it was a great moment. It was a great moment to go from Dumbarton to Sunderland.
I think that was the game we won 3-1. I'm sure Stephen Elliott scored in that game. I was there. Do remember that. Talking of Stephen Elliott, that kind of probably brings me quite nicely onto one of the questions. One thing I really remember about that season, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, is that I look at the team in League One with Sunderland now, and I think it's probably the weakest team we've had in my lifetime. It's not that great. But then I look at the side that we had in the championship winning season, and I look at the players and where they were brought from, and on paper, that was relatively sort of, I suppose you could class as a weak squad. There wasn't really that many names in it. You had Neill Collins, you had yourself, all came from like lower division clubs, Dean Whitehead, Liam Lawrence. When you've seen the players that he was bringing in and given a chance to, and bearing in mind the reason you went to Queen's Park, or one of the reasons you enjoyed your time at Queen's Park, taking out the factor of how big of a club Sunderland is and how much of a chance it was, how much did that sway your decision that you thought, actually, Mick McCarthy might not just chuck me in the reserves for 2 years, he might actually give me a chance here because he has done with X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, again, I was very much of, at that point in time, I had so much belief in myself that when I signed, Mick was like, look, I think you can have a career. You could just tell he was an honest guy, he's quite clear that. And starting the reserves, and I just felt, look, give me a chance. Just get me in the door and I'll prove myself. When I arrived at the club, I could see that they were signing these young, hungry players along with the good players they already had. But I could see as well there was a bit of a malaise in terms of that group underneath. Yeah, they had some talented young players, but they were probably a product of a system that you see now where they become too used to. Their expectations are that it's just going to be handed to them. That definitely happened, and I thought, I came in and I was so hungry, and I could just sense that I was going to play for a manager that played my position, an honest guy, seen something in me that he liked. If I just, as I say, listened to him, learned from him, the opportunities were going to come, and they came really, really quickly, which was, again, the opportunity because of the squad that you said. There was always going to be opportunities in that squad. And then just, the type of manager he is, he gave me that chance.
The team itself, as it was, I think he threw you in within sort of the first few weeks. So you're talking about going into the stadium just as a fan. And if I remember rightly, we were pulling at least sort of 35, I think then, 35,000, 40,000. So no disrespect to Dumbarton, but second division in the Scottish League, or third tier, if you prefer, I think as it was at the time. And then 3 weeks later, you're in front of like 35, 40,000. You talk about being very hungry and kind of wanting to prove yourself with that, and I can understand why. But what is it actually like walking out of that tunnel into that kind of white-hot atmosphere and expectation?
Oh, amazing. I mean, it just, again, I think when you get older, you look back and you like you say, the question, like, what was that like? Again, at that point in time, you realise that you've taken a big step, but you're also quite blinkered in that, I'm ready for this. Again, my dad tells a story about he flew to Reading to come and see my debut. And he said he was like coming up to the stadium and he's like, I just can't believe that I've went from going to watch you at Dumbarton, I'm walking up and there's thousands of Sunderland fans have made the journey, and you're going to be playing at the Majestic that night. So I think I was trying to soak it in, but at the same time, it was such a whirlwind that it was just like a game of football, But I think it was the things outside of it more than the game. The game was great, playing football, loving it, playing in a good team. It went relatively well for me early on, but then it's that you're going down the street and some people recognise you, and you're on the back page of the Sunderland Echo, and that's where the dressing room was good because they keep your feet on the ground. It was good dressing room like that. People like Gary Bean, Marcus Stewart, Thomas Myra. You wouldn't get carried away. But as a young boys, we just had a great time. We just honestly had a great time.
I've heard some really, really good things about Thomas Myra, and I don't know why. Obviously, he was great for us in that year, but I've heard he was more of a character than maybe we were let on. What was Tommy Myra like? Was he as funny as I've been told?
Yeah, brilliant. Just again, like, I think I understand your point about the squad. I know what you're saying, and I think that's the problem. People like to play football on paper, and it's not played on paper. And that squad on paper is not the best team in the league. But when you look at the nuts and bolts, Gary Brain, fantastic that season. Marcus Stewart, fantastic. George McCartney, Stephen Wright, Julio Arca, fantastic. Right, so the mainstay of the team was fantastic. Tommy Myra came in that team that year, and for me as a youngster, but every time I played, I just felt so confident because he was just an experienced man who would help you and then come in, do his work. And he said, he was just funny, but just funny in a dry way, and came in, did his business and went at home. But yeah, he's someone that probably, again, Sunderland fans don't mean underestimate, but because he was just so methodical in the way he played, really perfect for a championship goalkeeper.
Yeah, he was for that one season, and obviously the season afterwards, I think mistakes were made personally as a fan, but for that one season he was superb, and it's probably because we've had so many good goalkeepers kind of a little bit forgotten about, but he was
Yeah.
phenomenal in that whole season. Really, really good. I think we lost him for one game against Ipswich away, and no offence to Michael Ingham, but you could see there was a difference there with him and his experience not being there. I think we spoke about how much we both are big fans of Mick McCarthy, and I think the last time we actually spoke, which was a good few years ago now, you said Mick was the biggest influence on your career. Now, I know that you went onwards to Wolves, which we will come on to, but what is it that Mick did for you that meant you held him in such high esteem?
I think any manager, coach that gives you an opportunity, I mean, I look at the guys at Queen's Park and Martin, I've got great affection for them because they gave me that first break, and Mick gave me my first break in full time. But then it was obviously the fact that I was part of successful teams, because he created great environments. But on top of that, he put together, very organised teams and very effective teams that won championships, and totally underrated the fact that he won the championships under Sunderland rules in a league that's very hard to not just get promoted but win the championship. So for me, again, it was just I probably the benefit of what Mick worked with me on more when I didn't play for him. As I became 27, 28, 29, I really started to benefit from all the work and all the kind of time I had under him. So yeah, just a very good manager.
Talking about the team spirit we had, obviously we won the championship that year in your first year, and you seemed, I think you played almost half the games. I think the team itself had a really good team spirit, a really good mixture of young and hungry players and old in inverted commas, had been there and done it. Marcus Stewart, Gary Breen, that kind of player. But there's one particular character that really stands out in my mind when I remember those days. The Irish Slim Shady, as I will refer to him as, Sean Thornton. I would love to meet him just for 10 minutes because I just don't think there's probably anyone like him from what I've been told. But what are your memories of Sean Thornton?
Me and Sean were like chalk and cheese. In terms of I was this angry Scotsman that wanted to give 100% every minute of the day. And then Sean was this like talented, technical player and so cheeky. So me and him had our moments in training, but he was funny. Yeah. He was funny. I mean, him and Stephen Elliott together were like double act, funny. And I mean, one thing again, when I came and I knew Sean, because I remember he'd burst on the scene in the Premier League, but just straight away thought he's a really good player. Even guys that weren't playing every week, just a really good player, and one of many that have just fallen short because of their lifestyle outside the field. But yeah, I mean, he had a brass neck. Yeah,
I think Mick McCarthy, from what I've been told, and I've interviewed Jeff Whitley before, who was obviously another one of his very close mates. I think Sean was sort of difficult to handle, even for Mick. I mean, what was a regular day for Sean Thornton in training?
I mean, there wasn't any such thing as a regular day because he was like he was hot and cold, when he was on, he was great, and when he was on, though, he would let you know about it afterwards. Unfortunately, he's just not on often enough. Yeah. I do remember one funny story though. Sean came in with this red Nike rain jacket. It was kind of quite strange, and it wasn't what maybe anyone else would have wore, but he wore it in. But it looked like the Sunderland rain jackets at the time. So we're warming up. Well, Jeff's got it on. Like Jeff's got like Sean's brand new Nike rain jacket on, and Sean's not even realised until halfway through the session. And it's great. That's where Jeff was another great character in that team.
Yeah,
and I mean, Jeff, but just great. That's the thing about that team again. It wasn't full of choir boys. It certainly had its characters, but it was great. And for a young player who was a bit wet behind the ears, I was on the receiving end a few times.
Did you ever think that his rep career might have taken off, or do you think his rep career was best left in the dressing room?
Oh, definitely. It shouldn't even have seen the light of day, It should never have seen the light of day.
It was bad. Even as an impressionable, I think, 13, 14-year-old as I would have been at the time, I think even now I was like, no, that's not going to happen at all.
I actually think that moment sums Sean up, and that as opposed to just taking a step back, the boys just laid the bait and he just took it hook, line and sinker, and
There was someone in Sunderland, I think, had bought his old house and dug the flooring up. And when they lifted it up, he had tiled on the floor like ST number 10 or something like that, like down in like this special print or whatever. I'm sure Chris Brown was the one that brought that one up, and I think someone found the photo, and I think saying that Brownie's no choir boy either, is he? Let's be honest. There's a good story about Brownie, which is actually one of mine. Brownie, around the same time we had a discussion, he invited me down to the Sunderland game. He said, I really enjoyed the interview. I've never been back to Sunderland. I've got tickets to the Players Lounge. And that, me, council estate kid from Southwick, had never been in the Players Lounge. So I said, yeah, I'd love to. That'd be brilliant. So he says, I'll bring you down. That's no problem. My dad's going to be there, Alan, and stuff like that. I said, fantastic. No problem at all. I says, what do I wear? Like, I've never been in the Players Lounge. I've never had anyone in players that I've known or anything like that. Like, is it just casual? And he went, no, it's got to be like a black suit with a red tie, and it's got to be a white shirt. So I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, it has to be, mate, or they won't let you in. And I was like, all right, brilliant, no problem at all. So I went out and bought this like nice like trim suit from Burton's. I got myself a nice red tie from Asda, pretty much like a club tie, pretty much. Put some nice shoes on and stuff like that. He says, can you meet us in the Peacock beforehand? I says, yeah, no bother, mate. He says, all the lads are here. We'll walk down in our suits. Sent a photo and I went, is this all right? And he was like, yeah, it's fantastic, no problem. I turned up with the Peacock and they were all in fucking lamb's wool jumpers and casual dress. So yeah, so that one's been let out the bag, Brownie, you bastard. Thanks very much.
He's brilliant.
Yeah,
Brownie's
he's a good man. I'm not surprised he's gone on and do well with this podcast, truth be told. But yeah, if he tells you to wear a suit, he means the opposite. Obviously, I know you stay in touch with Brownie because you were on Under the Cosh not too long ago, which I watched live. But I think, talking about team spirit, you've remained close with quite a few of the lads, haven't you, at the club?
Yeah. Me and Dean Whitehead were really good friends, and we're actually on our pro license together right now. I mean, Brownie was really helpful to me when I came to Sunderland. Even though he's a little younger, just kind of showed me the ropes and just was really good. Dean Whitehead, I mean, Stephen Elliott was my roommate. Again, there's a lot of lads. Danny Collins. We just had a great group. Lads, I played with Gary Breen again at Wolves. So again, you know what it's like with these teams that you don't always get to stay in touch as much as you'd like, but the minute you get together, and it's good. And Stevie Caldwell's in Canada, and I've bumped into him a couple of times when we've been in Toronto, and he's helped me on a couple of occasions with things. So it's great to be able to pick up the phone to these guys.
The following season obviously didn't go that well for the club at all, I think. But for you as an individual, and I'm looking at it from like a different perspective, you spent time on loan at Hartlepool and Sheffield United. You came back a couple of times and went back on loan, but I think in total you played about sort of 30 games. So whilst the club's kind of suffering, how important was that spell in your career to have two really good loan spells at two really good clubs?
Yeah, you know what? It was a really strange season. Hartlepool was fantastic, and in hindsight, and I know why Mick did it, because he needed me back. In hindsight, I probably would have been better just trying to get the 40, 50 games in at Hartlepool. I left them to come back. And at the time, when Mick's calling you back and you're thinking, great, let's go and stake a claim to try and get in the team. Really difficult period at Sunderland, obviously, at the time. And then played in the FA Cup at home to Northwich. Yeah, and scored. And it was good. I mean, again, against a conference team, and we won. And then probably missed my opportunity to really force a claim, because we went to Brentford and didn't play great. The team didn't play great. We got beaten, which was a really disappointing day. And then I remember, then I went to Sheffield United on loan. And then in the meantime, Mick got sacked. I came back from Sheffield United, and that was probably one of the most disappointing things, that I never got opportunity when I came back. And I was training I thought I was training really well, training really hard. Thought I deserved an opportunity, and it just never came. And that was a disappointing end to the season. But yeah, as a whole, learnt a lot. Get 30 games under my belt, and I felt actually the next season, coming back that pre-season, I felt like really ready to stake a claim to be more of a regular.
With that time in Sunderland's history. I'll probably remember it till the day I die, because it was the most weird positive / negative time ever. I mean, by the time he'd arrived back, Mick McCarthy had been sacked, and Bowley and Quinney had both been in sort of temporary charge, if you prefer. You'd been back once or twice during the Premier League season, but then you kind of came back into the first team picture under Quinney. Now, I spoke to or interviewed Niall Quinn a few years ago, and he spoke about how when he was manager / chairman / secretary / whatever job he needed to do, he invited each player, I think, into the office, alphabetical order, see where they thought their future lied. And I think the first 3 players, which we worked out, the first one would have been Ben Alec, wanted to leave immediately. I said, I want to go sort of elsewhere. Now, I think, as far as I remember, you told me you really wanted to get in this team and knuckle down. But do you remember the meeting that you and Niall had? And if so, how did he treat those players during that period, which was probably quite a difficult transition of no man's land because we had no real manager?
Yeah, I think, again, it was probably the worst. In some respects, it was the worst thing for me, because coming back in and Niall was there, and he's trying to get a hold of. It's very hard when a team's been relegated, and he's probably not planning to be the manager. He's trying to get a hold of things, and I'm the least of his concerns, because I'm 4th, 5th choice centre back. But in my mind, this is the time for me to really. I need to start getting in and playing. The conversation again, for me, was just about putting a marker down, saying I'm going to do everything I can, and I had a good pre-season. But again, as you look at it now, is Niall Quinn going to start me in the first game of the season when he's got people like Kenny Cunningham, Danny Collins, I can't remember who else, Stevie Caldwell was there.
Yeah.
So I look at it now, but I remember thinking I should be in with a shout here. But what I'll always remember is so I was playing, and we had a terrible start to the season after a terrible start. We got beat 3-2 at home to Plymouth, and they were playing Southend the next game, and I'd been playing really well in training and reserves, and he's like, "You're playing this weekend," and I thought, brilliant, like, do well. And we went down there and we got beat 3-1, and I remember after the game, because I thought, you know what, I played well there, but we got beat 3-1 by Southend. The fans are going mental, rightly so. Sunderland, it's not good enough. And I remember after the game, and Niall Quinn, he was great with me, but he did his interview and he said one player that can hold his head up was Neill Collins today. And I remember thinking, wow, that at the time for me as an individual in a selfish way, as things were poor for the club, I thought, well, it was nice to be recognised. First game, desperate to do well, desperate for the team to do well. But I'm thinking we've just lost 3-1 to Southend. Not good. And then it got worse because we went to Bury and got beat 2-0. And, I felt so bad for Niall Quinn, because at the end of the game, I think he just didn't know what to do. But we all know what happened after that. But what I would say about Niall, because I went on loan to Wales, and as a chairman, he phoned me on a couple of occasions. And again, just went above and beyond, just the personal touch. And I've played in a testimonial with him since. And yeah, he's someone, again, I just hold in really high regard. I just thought it was a really tough period. He was an honest guy, trying to do his best for a club that he quite clearly has a huge affection for. And wasn't ideal for me, but I've got really, really good memories of Niall. And I think he's someone that was better when he was involved at Sunderland. The club was better off when Niall was involved.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Niall's got a fantastic ability from the really small interactions I've had at making everyone around him feel like the most important person on the planet. He was 2 hours late for my interview, and he came in and said, I'm only available for 40 minutes. I know I offered you an hour and a half, but somehow he managed to make me feel like I was the important one, and like he was really like happy to do it. And I just thought, what a wonderful man. And afterwards I thought, that bastard was 2 hours late, and he's made me convinced that that was absolutely fine when it really, really wasn't. But phenomenal man on a serious note, and an absolute Sunderland legend.
Totally agree.
Roy Keane's appointment, obviously, as you touched on before, was something that changed the entire dynamic. Now, technically, it was Quinney's game, but in my opinion, by this point, everyone knew Roy Keane was taking charge. So we play against West Brom, you score. I was down at Leeds a few days later. I think you played it right back. So first 2 games, you think, oh, I really want to impress Roy Keane here, but this might be the long game. But he puts you straight in, which would have been, I think, Derby, you got dropped, and then Leeds. I think he brought you back in at right back. But what was your opinion on Keane? Is he as fiery as he makes out?
So again, when he got appointed, my immediate thought was, again, Roy Keane will not know who I am. And I don't mean that he wouldn't know, he'd do his homework. I'm sure he would be aware. But what I mean is he'll not have any ideas of me as a player. So that day against West Brom, I was so fired up to do well. And we had a very good team performance that day. And his impact was definitely felt. And equally, I was pleased for Neill. I was pleased to get the win for his last game in charge. Then he signed all these players. And we went to Derby. And I got the feeling that, because he kind of shaped up a little bit 2 days before and I wasn't in it. And I just, again, I've told you at that point in time, I was like so focused on I need to start getting in the team regularly. So I just went to see him, first player at the club to go and knock his door. And he was my hero growing up. Tommy Burns and then Roy Keane was a close second. But again, I didn't really care. I was going to go in and see him. I wasn't going in to have an argument, just to ask where things stood. We just beat West Brom 2-0, and regardless of the goal, I'd played very well against John Hartson, and he made me feel like $1 million. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I think he respected the fact that I went to see him as a young lad, and he just said, "Look, you've got a big part to play. I really like what I've seen. We're going to take this club one way. You're going to be part of it." We went to Derby. I was on the bench. We won, and then he still put me in the next game at right back. I just felt, he could tell you how it was. He could make you feel uncomfortable, but a lot of positives, and I have a lot of positive things to say about him. And even when it came to me wanting to go to Wolves, Roy wanted me to stay. Roy Keane asked me to stay, and I just felt with Mick I would get more of an opportunity to play centre back in my position. And I think if I'd been more experienced and more games under my belt, I would have stayed and really fought for my position. But at that time, I wanted a bit more of less of the unknown. So I said I thought it was best. And the fact that he let me go, but again, he was very much like, "Look, I'd like you to stay." But again, Roy's not one of those ones. If you want to go, he's not going to, especially a young kid, if you want to go, he's going to let you go. But nothing but good things to say about him.
With Keane, was he the kind of perfect anecdote for what was, like, at the time, a losing culture at Sunderland? It kind of felt as a fan like he walked in the door and everyone just went, "Right, we don't lose anymore then"? That's kind of how it felt.
Yeah, we went from, like you say, like lose, and then we beat Derby, we beat Leeds, we beat West Brom, we won 3-0, and I thought, I don't think we'll ever lose again.
Yeah.
Now it wasn't as straightforward as that, because I think between then and January it was still a bit up and down. But no question, whatever anyone says about him, and like anyone, he's not perfect. You want to impress him, you want to do well for him. He's got an aura about him that you can't. Whether it's because he was a great player or not, it doesn't matter. He's got that aura, and he's definitely just suited to Sunderland. Just like Mick suited Sunderland, even though they're both different, they're suited to Sunderland. And I think there's a lot to be said for that with clubs like tradition that Sunderland have got.
Yeah, I've always said that with Sunderland, that the best managers that succeed at Sunderland are the ones with real character, like McCarthy, Reedy, Allardyce, Roy Keane.
Yeah.
Character in abundance and all successful. I don't think it's any secret that Mick and Roy didn't really get on. Since Saipan, shall we say, and I don't think they'd actually spoken, but the first conversation that they had was to negotiate your move to Wolves. So was that kind of surreal, being the peacemaker between one of the biggest feuds in football history?
I wouldn't call it peacemaker, but yeah, they spoke. I mean, so strange. So strange, as I say, Roy Keane growing up was a hero, and then everything about that situation with them. So I think it says to me a lot about them both, that one, Roy Keane, Mick phoned Roy answered and spoke, and they sorted it out.
Yeah.
Simple. Because, again, when it comes down to it, they might not get on, but they're both just professional and acted like men in that situation. And I'm grateful for them both that was able to happen, because I was really concerned that it wouldn't because of that. And that didn't hold it back. And it wasn't so much about leaving Sunderland, but just about the opportunity to go and try and start becoming a regular somewhere.
Talking about Wolves, obviously the loan to Wolves became permanent, and you went on to play a really prominent role in another Championship promotion. For me, I sometimes feel like Wolves get is underrated the right word? It's like the money they're spending these days and the quality they have, yeah, people really admire them now. But I think for many, many years, and certainly since I've been a kid, Wolves are a huge club that sometimes people forget how big they are. I mean, how big was it turning out for a promotion chasing Wolves side, and how intense was the pressure at Wolves? Because it's a huge club, isn't it?
Again, you mentioned it. I mean, huge club, great fan base, passionate fan base. And I think the biggest thing you said is there's a pressure. I mean, I think again with Sunderland, there's a demand, but the people in the northeast are different in that they love their football, very supportive, but demanding. The Wolves fans are again as passionate, but demanding in a different type of way. Quicker to get on people's backs, even when things are going well. Don't know if it's just a trait of the Midlands. But again, really great memories. I'm glad I played when the club was doing well.
Yeah.
But no, I totally agree. And I think these are clubs that are great to see, like a Wolves in the Premier League. Is, there's something good about watching Wolves in the Premier League, just as we're missing, the Premier League's missed Leeds and misses Sunderland, because people like to watch these clubs because there's great tradition about them.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And obviously I'm biased with Sunderland, and I've for a long time disliked Leeds, and even I've started finding myself enjoying Leeds being back. But when it comes to Wolves, I think, you're looking at, you're coming from Queen's Park, Dumbarton, then Sunderland, Sheffield United on loan, obviously went on to play from later, and Wolves as well. When you get signed by clubs like that with that level of intense pressure, there must be a part of you that thinks, well, I'm doing something right here because I've not made it. You obviously want to go as high up as you can, but you think, I've played for Sunderland, I've played for Wolves and Sheffield United. Does that give you like an inner confidence having that kind of intensity?
Honestly, I just feel myself very fortunate to get the opportunity that the manager at the time at those clubs is seen something in me that thinks I'm capable of playing. Grew up obviously supporting my team, which was Kilmarnock, and relative to Scotland, they're a big club in Scotland traditionally, and I remember going along and big games as a fan, and then also watching English football and recognising your Sunderland, Wolves, Leeds, all these teams. So the opportunity to play for them wasn't lost on me. But yeah, I think again, being part of these clubs it's great, and you learn quickly. You learn quickly, and that's where the senior players are good and the fans are good. I'd much rather play for a club where things are bad and it's really bad, but when things are good, it's really, really good, as opposed to just being middle of the road all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. I love those away days. My first year we went to Derby with Sunderland, we won 2-0. We were, top of the league. I think it's just amazing experiences, and that's one of the reasons I kind of chose something different when I left Sheffield United, was to come over here, because I just thought I might find it tough going to a lesser team in England where you turn out away and there's 200 fans there. And I know it means the same to them as it means to you, Sunderland. I get that, but it's just great when you've got that big following and that pressure. The expectation's great.
And I think every club you've been at as well could probably tick that box, if we're honest, in England especially. The Wolves side that you played in had some great characters, and the one that stands out for me is one of my favourite centre-halves of all time, Jody Craddock. Great man, great character, great defender. But Richard Stearman, he was obviously a character as well, which we've seen last year on social media with his enjoyment at Sheffield United getting promoted. Carl Henry, I think, bit of a shithouse, but you'd want him in your team probably for that reason. Mick McCarthy managing to foster another great team spirit. How does Mick McCarthy manage to foster such a good team spirit wherever he goes? Because he does do it.
A couple of things. Leads by example. I think you can say things, but that means nothing. You lead by example. So he leads with his own work ethic, his own values, the way he treats people. And then two, just he recruits the right people. He recruits the right people. He gets in people that are going to play a certain way, exude certain things. I mean, Carl Henry, you mentioned Carl Henry, great lad, great player in terms of championship, premiership, in terms of helping teams that bottom half. So he just fosters that. Here's the standards. He lives them, brings in players that that have those same standards and lets it all kind of take its course. So, you know, as a manager myself now, I try and look at what he did, and I want to create similar environments where it's boys that are hungry, boys that are play with determination, desire, but then have a great time doing it.
Yeah,
That was
absolutely.
the thing.
Yeah,
you know.
And that's definitely something, I suppose, with you playing under McCarthy twice and obviously playing under Roy Keane, I can imagine you've took, and the way that Roy Keane probably took stuff from Brian Clough and Sir Alex, whether we'll admit that or not. Do you take things from the managers you played under with your own twist on it then when you become a manager?
The first thing, and one of the things I try to say is, like, I'm not Mick McCarthy or Roy Keane. Quite clearly, I'm myself, and I've got to be myself. Otherwise, people see right through you. But I do quite often think in situations, what would Mick have done there? Why would he have done that? Right? Yeah, I think that's the right course of what. How would Roy Keane? What would he have said about that? You know, and I think you obviously take the good and the bad from all these coaches, but then you are yourself. You've got to be. You take sessions that they did and add and pull things from man management. But again, then as well, the game's always changing, and that doesn't mean their principles still apply. But what I mean is, you're always looking at how it affects the current situation.
Yeah, absolutely, especially in modern day, I suppose. You had a season on loan at Preston North End. You played under Darren Ferguson, who's obviously still in the game at Peterborough. Well, he's always at Peterborough at some point. What was your time with Darren like? Because obviously I can imagine, even if you try not to, you sometimes maybe go there with a perceived idea because of his dad.
Yeah, so I went to Preston under Alan Irvine, and then he got sacked. Then Darren came in, and I wasn't obviously Darren's cup of tea. And I would say at that point, I was probably could have handled things different, left Wolves, and definitely learned a lot during that period. And me and Darren didn't see eye to eye. And the fact that he didn't pick me. but I think what I would say about Darren is that he learned a lot from that period in time. I learned a lot. And then after that period, he actually tried to sign me again. And I would have went to play for him at Peterborough. The circumstances had been different. And I certainly, as I say, look back at my part in that time, think I could have done things differently. And I think he said the same publicly about his whole Preston experience. So he's been on and done great with Peterborough, and his teams are always pretty exciting to watch. And again, you talk about clubs suiting different managers. Darren McCarthy, the owner there, is very good, and him and Darren get on really well. So it seems to be pretty successful kind of process they've got together. But yeah, that wasn't the best period.
I thought you'd only been there. I thought I might not get the best answer at that, but I'll try it nonetheless. As it was, though, I mean, you technically dropped the league, but you certainly didn't drop a club size. You actually probably went to a huge club and one of the biggest clubs in Britain, I think. Leeds at the time were in League One. Everyone knows the story of Leeds. Leeds are finally obviously back in the Premier League, which we touched on. But they've been a massive club even in that sort of 15 years they were away. I mean, they are like an elite team, whether you like them or not. And I know that a lot of people don't. And I know Leeds don't really care about that. But you're part of the side that helped them get outside of League One. Talking about intensity of being at a club, Sunderland's intense, Wolves is intense. I imagine Leeds in League One, that must have been like an insane amount of intensity.
Yeah. Again, when I was leaving Wales, my first choice was to go to Leeds, even though they were in League One. I just felt it was a great opportunity to go to the club and play, and it didn't happen, but then it did at the end of that season. And played the last 10 games, and that last game when we knew we had to win at Ellen Road to get promotion, couldn't wait for the game. I couldn't wait for it, but it was the pressure that week was intense, and that final day game against Bristol Rovers when we won to go up would definitely go down in my top three experiences. It was just, we were down to 10 men, 1-0 down, 40 minutes left, and we came back and won, and the place was just unbelievable. No, I respect Leeds as a huge club. I think, just like you've said it, they're just a great football club in England, and great following, pleased for their fans, and that was a great experience to be part of that.
When you were at Leeds, a lot of people talk about the North East as being a bubble, and it most definitely is. But Leeds are kind of on their own in a sense. I suppose Newcastle and Sunderland are different cities, but we're 8 mile apart. Leeds, there's not really that much nearer, if we're honest with each other. Yeah, you've got Sheffield and that, but it's not near. How much of a bubble is Leeds? Like, do you get like stopped in the street? Do you sometimes get a bit of jip in the street? Get a bit of people having to go at you and stuff like that because it means that much to them?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely where Leeds is. The rivals are like Manchester United, and that's, as you say, they're not close. No, just again, like you're out walking your dog and people are shouting, "How you doing?" And then of course you get some stuff that's not quite as nice when it's not going as well. But that's what I love. I just love that. I just love when the football club means so much to the people, man, women, boy, girl. Like they all know about how the football team's getting on. That's the teams you want to play for. So again, it was intense, but great, and you're right. They don't have that neighbourly rivalry, but it almost sets them apart in terms of having all these fans to themselves.
Clubs like Leeds and Sunderland and Wolves, and especially probably Sunderland and Leeds, do you think you need to have a certain kind of character to play for a club like that? Because like you said before, there's been certain situations over the past few seasons where there's been maybe unsavoury things said that have been caught on camera, such as the nature of social media. I think a couple of seasons ago, someone had to go at Tom Flanagan's hair and said his hair was rubbish or something like that. Or I can't quite remember what it was, but I think he'd not even played and he'd been in the shower and they said how rubbish he was. And he said, I haven't even played, I've only been in the shower doing my hair or something along that line. And everyone watched it, was like, oh, for God's sake. But we know what happens across big clubs. Do you think you need a certain character where, like, when that unsavoury stuff comes along, you can kind of just be a bit like, yeah, whatever, mate, that's fine. Because if it means that much to the people that you get the negative and the positive in such full flow, you're at a football club where football's everything. Is that a positive and you've got to have the right kind of character for it?
Yeah, definitely. You don't all need to be the same character to be successful there, because you've seen that. There's like guys that are successful that are quiet, in their nature, but somewhere you need to have a thick skin, steely resolve, just an ability to deal with that. Absolutely. And I think I wouldn't say it's harder, but again, if I was playing for Sunderland, I wouldn't be on social media. Not, I wouldn't be, because I'd be close. I'd try to keep that negative stuff away, because again, what's the point? It's not to not engage with the fans. Great, if some player wants to engage with the fans, brilliant. But I think you've just got to have a real sense of who do you listen to, and then like you said, these fans, it's their life. If they're going to shout at me, I'm going to need to deal with it and just get it right on the field.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's as simple as that. And I think you can get a lot of different types of characters that can deal with that, but then you can get certainly ones that are good players in Championship League One, but not for clubs like that. And then when they come, they're almost blown away by the pressure.
You played under Simon Grayson at Leeds. Grayson, from a Sunderland fan's perspective, and he wasn't helped by a documentary, no matter what your thoughts are. And he hasn't had a successful past few years, and he's probably been a bit prodded and poked at and laughed at because of the Sunderland documentary. And he did not do well at Sunderland, but neither did Coleman. Neither manager did well, and both have got very different reputations in the game. He had a really good reputation at Leeds. He's a big Leeds fan, you can tell. You played under him, you had success under him. Where does he rank under managers that you played under?
I think it's very difficult, right, when you're on a documentary where you're showing 7-8 hours from a 46 game season, to be judged on that is very difficult. And I think I wouldn't like being in that situation where that's thrust upon you in a job coming out of the Premier League that Mourinho could have been in charge of that club and they might have got relegated. They might have done, right? A lot of that stuff that I seen in that was similar experiences to what I had playing under Simon Grayson, personally. Some of the players at the time, should they be maybe saying those things on camera? Probably not. They probably had enough to be getting on with. But man management, not particularly a strong point of Simon's. I don't think tactically, again, I've seen moments of great tactical preparation, and they were few and far between compared to someone like Mick McCarthy. But again, very effective manager at times. Got Blackpool out League One, kept them in the Championship. Had some great results with Leeds in the Cup and got Leeds out that league. I personally think the following season, with the squad we had, we should have been promoted again. I left around end of January, and at Christmas time we were second, and we should have capitalised on that. So I'm now in the same job as Simon, and if I have, some of the success that he's had, I'll be very pleased. But again, if I'm being perfectly honest, my experience with Simon wasn't that much of a positive one. And I think some parts of the Sunderland documentary might be disappointed with, but I've certainly seen a lot of those aspects in my time under him at Leeds.
Yeah. The next club that you went to, obviously, your final spell in England was I think a 6-year stint at Sheffield United. In your first season, I think it was the first and ended in relegation, but there was actually a period of time where you played under, obviously, the late, great Gary Speed. And I mean, I've got to be honest, as a Sunderland fan, when he played for Newcastle, I hated playing against him because I knew what kind of a player he was like. And it's very easy to speak about someone who's, passed on and speak about them in positive terms, but he did always come across like a fantastic bloke, like a really wonderful guy. And it's beyond sad what happened. But in your experience, how good of a person was he?
Well, I actually went to Sheffield United just after he left.
Just miss him.
He went to Wales, but I'll tell you a quick story that tells you how nice he is. Playing against Sheffield United for Leeds, and huge, great game, full house at Ellen Road. They've not started great, Sheffield United. It's a real ding-dong Yorkshire derby. It was brilliant. It was a great game. And something's happened over near the touchline. And he's got out his dugout to have a go at one of our players. And I was like, right in the moment of the game, and I just give him an absolute mouthful. Gary Speed, legend, just like out of order really from me. But I'm in the game, and I'm just like, told him what I thought. And at the end of the game, and that was probably one of my best games in Leeds jersey. We won 1-0. But he came up to me at the end of the game, shook my hand, and kind of apologised. And the only person that should have been apologising was me, but I just thought that kind of tells you all you need to know about the gentleman that he is. And it was sad when the news came through, and I went to Sheffield United only a month or two later, and I think that had an impact.
Yeah.
I think that had an impact on the guys there when when the news came through. So yeah, great man.
Yeah, and everyone says the same thing, and said beforehand, everyone's had really good words to speak about him. I thought you were there under him, but you've had the experience of him, which is great that you've managed to even just miss him by a month, but at the same time have that experience. When you were at Sheffield United, I'm going to go one positive, one negative here, but you'll understand why I'm asking the negative question probably. But the positive first and foremost. You went on an unbelievable FA Cup run, which ended in like a bonkers sort of 8-goal thriller against Hull City. You went in the lead twice before falling behind to, I think, 4 second-half goals against, I'm sure it was bloody Steve Bruce. I'm sure it was his whole team. That was at Wembley, because obviously the semi-finals played at Wembley at the time. Pinnacle of a lot of people's careers playing at Wembley in any sort of game. When you look back on that game, because I imagine at the time you're devastated, you've conceded 5, you've been in the lead twice, but when you look back on it, how do you view it?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of pride in that spell. It was great, really, great time. We went club record, 10 wins in a row.
Yeah.
Club record, clean sheets, culminating eventually getting to the semi-final. The week leading up to semi-final, great preparation. We're going to go and play. We're going to go and enjoy it. We took Hull completely by surprise, dominated them first half, couldn't get close to us. We were 2-1 up. Then the second half, we ran out a little bit of steam. And also, I think we should have maybe adapted more. Individually, it's easy in hindsight to say all these things. You know what? Although we lost 5 goals, the Sheffield United fans club was off. I thought we put in a great team performance. I still think to this day that we missed an opportunity, but it's hard. It's hard because it's hard to say too much because it's easy after the fact. We continued to try and go the way we had in the first half, and maybe we should have changed. But maybe we'd say if we'd changed and it hadn't worked, we'd have said we should have kept doing the same thing. That's life, isn't it? We lost kind of 2 sucker punch goals, and then it went 4-2 quite quickly. And honestly, by the end of the game, we were like, if that had went to extra time, because we made it 4-3, and I thought, if this goes to extra time, I don't know how we're going to get through it, because Wembley does sap it out you.
Yeah.
So, no, it was a lot of pride in that run, but then disappointment as well.
You played for Sheffield United during a time when it was a bit chop changey, shall we say. It was managers here, managers there, 5th, 3rd, 11th, 6th, not quite landing where they should be. Now, the similarities that I have between Sheffield United and West Sunderland are not that surprising, because I think at the time, Sheffield United obviously played its biggest team in League One at the time. Impossible to say anything different. So, probably more from a Sunderland perspective, what is that division like in terms of the pressure that you can feel when you're the biggest club in that division and every single club that you play against week in, week out sees you as a scout? How difficult is that?
It's difficult, but it can be positive in equal measure, depending on how good you are.
Yeah.
Because you can be you can have beaten teams before they turn up. But if you're not good enough, it's double hard. Because 1, you're not good enough, and 2, they're up for it. We were very unfortunate in our first year at Sheffield United. I mean, we had a fantastic team, 92 points or 90 points. The whole Chet Evans thing, everything that could have went wrong in some respects went wrong. We still scored loads of goals. So that was unfortunate. And then before you know it, you're in there a second year. You lose some of your good players. You fill them up with lesser players. But you're still the big club. Mm-hmm. I think, and this is only my opinion, and I didn't have to watch the football, so I can't come up, but Danny Wilson did a really good job in difficult circumstances. I think probably very similar to Jack Ross. And when things are looking like we're not going to get out maybe a second year, it's probably more down to the circumstances sometimes than the manager. He's probably done really well in difficult circumstances, but the fans just can't think. 1 year's fine, 2 years, the thought of a third year becomes like, but ends up worse. And in hindsight, Sheffield United shouldn't have sacked Danny Wilson. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case with Jack Ross. I don't know, because I'm, Sunderland fans, it's their club. But I think getting the right man, you said it's Sheffield United. Again, Nigel Atkins, fantastic record as a manager, unbelievable. Wasn't the right man for Sheffield United in difficult circumstances, at a difficult time. Chris Wilder, right man, right time. I always felt with Nigel, he just didn't get the club, didn't get the fans. Wilder quite clearly does. I just feel with Sunderland, you get what the North East's about, you get what the club's about, go a long, long way. Get what type of players thrive there. That's a big part of it. So, again, to answer your question, yeah, it's tough at times, especially every home game's tough because teams come, but at the same time, do they camp in? So you just dominate them. You go on the road, you're taking 4,000 or 5,000 people. It's their biggest home game of the season. But you know what? Again, give me the 4,000 or 5,000 because when you win, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I think if you've got the good team good enough, the problem at Sheffield United at times, we just didn't have a good enough team. But, so you can deal with expectations, but if you don't have goal scorers and people that can do the things that you need to win, it doesn't matter what the mentality is.
But Neil, thanks so much for popping on. Really good to catch up. I'm sure the weather's better in Tampa Bay than where it is here in not so sunny Glasgow, but I appreciate you coming on and taking time away from sunbathing, mate. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
No problem.